Ladies and gentlemen, you don't need applause to validate the direction you're walking in. You don't need the crowd to convince you that your pace is the right one. You don't need a partner in order to claim victory in a world designed to isolate those who think deeply. Winning alone is not a tragedy. It is not a misfortune. It is not a punishment. It is a rite of passage. It is the great trial of your character. And if you are facing that trial, you are closer to discovering your real strength than you've ever been before. There is something sacred about walking a path no one else sees, something painful, something beautiful, something that forces growth from the bones. You see, loneliness isn't just the absence of people. It's the presence of unshared truth. It's waking up with a vision so sharp that others call it delusion. It's standing in a storm with no one to hold the umbrella but refusing to step inside. That kind of solitude isn't weakness. It's clarity, and clarity is rare. Most don't want it, most can't handle it, most run from it. But if you're going to win alone, you're going to have to face it, not just once, every day there's a war happening. And it's not outside, it's not political, it's not economic, it's internal, it's spiritual, it's psychological, and it's invisible. That war is between who you were and who you're called to become, between comfort and greatness, between excuses and execution, and the battlefield is where nobody can fight for you. That's why winning alone is so powerful, because when you win there, it's real. When you win there, it can't be taken. It can't be faked, it can't be borrowed, but first you need to suffer, not because suffering is holy by itself, but because it's revealing. When you suffer, illusions die, lies dissolve, weakness is exposed. And it is only in that brutal exposure that you can start the rebuilding. That's where winning begins, not with applause, but with honest pain, not with support, but with confrontation. You have to look at the parts of you that sabotage your future and tell them, not anymore. In that confrontation, that battle in the dark, no audience will cheer for it, no one will post it, no one will celebrate it, but it is more important than anything else you will do. Don't expect a parade when you choose discipline over distraction. Don't expect comfort when you choose purpose over pleasure. And don't expect company when you choose to elevate your life. That's what separates those who rise from those who stay where they are. The ones who rise don't need permission. They don't need encouragement. They don't need an army. They look in the mirror and say, "This mountain is mine to climb." And they start walking, alone if they must. You see, the process is what creates the prize. Not the other way around, and the process is lonely. The process is silent. The process is humiliating. It's doing the right thing when no one claps. It's staying consistent when no one notices. It's sacrificing sleep, status, and sometimes sanity to build something that doesn't even exist yet. That takes courage, that takes vision, that takes character, and none of that can be outsourced. The modern world sells the lie that you need to be seen to matter, that if no one's watching, it's not real. But the truth is the opposite. If you need to be seen to stay committed, you aren't committed. If you need followers to stay disciplined, you aren't disciplined. If you need validation to believe in yourself, you don't really believe. Winning alone proves the realness of your identity. It strips away the need to perform, and it leaves you with only one option: to become. This is not about detaching from humanity. It's about becoming strong enough to serve it properly. You can't help others if you're addicted to their approval. You can't lead if you're chained to being liked. You can't speak truth if you're terrified of rejection. The only way to carry real influence is to become someone who has already faced solitude and survived. Because then and only then you're free from needing applause, free from chasing trends, free from betraying your values to avoid discomfort, and that freedom is earned in isolation, when the world goes quiet and the mirror speaks louder than the crowd. When you realize that success is not a destination but a set of habits, a code, a quiet honor you keep when no one's watching. That's how legacies are built, not in the spotlight, in the shadows, in the discipline of early mornings and late nights. In the small choices that seem invisible but stack into a future no one thought was possible. Look around, the ones who made it, the ones who truly left something behind. They didn't start with applause. They didn't wait for support. They didn't need perfect conditions. They walked through storms. They heard the laughter. They felt the doubt, and they kept walking. Not because they were fearless, but because they knew that fear is not a wall, it's a test. And passing that test is what qualifies you to rise, but the enemy is seductive. Comfort whispers in your ear, you don't need to push today. Distraction offers you 100 paths of least resistance. Procrastination tells you you'll be ready tomorrow. And if you listen long enough, you'll believe it. You'll delay greatness for comfort. You'll exchange discipline for dopamine. You'll trade purpose for popularity. And that is how you lose, quietly, slowly, and with excuses. You have to recognize the game being played. The modern world is designed to keep you numb. Entertainment, convenience, consumption. It's all a trap if you're not awake. If you're going to win alone, you have to wake up. You have to see through the lie that says meaning can be downloaded, earned without effort, or found without sacrifice. It can't. Meaning requires pain. Identity requires responsibility. Growth requires pressure, and all of that begins when you decide to stop waiting for someone else to do it with you. You build your future one discipline at a time. You earn your confidence one promise kept at a time. And every time you choose to stay on the path, even when no one sees, you are casting votes for your future self. That's the real scoreboard. Not likes, not followers, not trends. It's the scoreboard of your soul. And the only way to win that game is alone, not forever, but first, because before you lead others, you have to lead yourself. Before you preach values, you have to live them. Before you build a legacy, you have to build a foundation. And that foundation is built in the dark, when you do the work, when you keep the promise, when you face the mirror and tell the truth, not the convenient truth, the painful one, the one that says you've been slacking, the one that says you've been making excuses, the one that says you're capable of more, and you know it. You don't get to the top by chance. You don't become elite by luck. You get there by war, the war of the soul, the war between comfort and calling. And if you want to win that war, you better be ready to bleed in silence, to cry in silence, to train in silence, because that's where the real trophies are won. In silence, in solitude, in struggle. But here's the reward. When you win alone, you no longer fear being alone. When you win alone, you become your own source of strength. You become self-generating, self-governing, unshakable, not because life got easier, but because you became someone who doesn't flinch, who doesn't fold, who doesn't beg for company to feel whole. And the irony is, once you become that person, the right people show up. Not because you needed them, but because you attracted them by who you became. And you didn't wait for them to start. That's the difference. Losers wait to be found. Winners build and let others catch up. Every day is a vote for who you are becoming. Every decision, a declaration of what you believe about your own value. The question is not, are you supported? The question is, are you consistent? Not, are you noticed? But are you disciplined? Not, are you liked? But are you becoming undeniable? Because when you are undeniable, the world adjusts. People change, doors open, but not before. You will be misunderstood. You will be doubted. You will be laughed at. But that is not evidence of failure. It's the cost of being early, of being different, of being real. If they don't doubt you, you're not aiming high enough. If they don't question you, you're not making waves. If they don't resist you, you're not changing anything. And if you're not changing anything, what are you doing? There is something inside you that cannot be built with applause. It must be built in silence. It must be built when you're tired, unmotivated, and unseen. That's how you build identity. Not through convenience, but through commitment. That's how you win alone. You keep going, not because it's easy, because it's right. And right now, if you're hearing this and you're alone in your process, in your work, in your calling, then you're on time. You're on path. Don't wait for them to get it. Don't pause for them to believe. Don't bend to fit in. Build to stand out every day, every step, every breath, alone if you must, but never off path. Because one day, when the light finds you, it will find someone who already became what the world wasn't ready for. And that is how you win alone. There's a reason why solitude feels heavy, why the silence echoes louder than noise ever could, and why sitting alone with yourself feels like stepping into a battlefield. It's because solitude isn't emptiness. It's confrontation when everything external is stripped away. No opinions, no applause, no distractions. You're left with the rawest version of yourself. There's no more pretending in solitude, no more performance. No more camouflage. You stand in the center of your own psyche, and what you find there either shapes you or breaks you. But either way, it reveals the truth. Most people run from it. That silence, that stillness, it's terrifying to them. Because it demands honesty. It demands clarity. It doesn't allow you to keep living on autopilot. It interrupts the lies you've made peace with. It forces you to sit with your habits, your regrets, your fears, your laziness, your contradictions. In the noise, all that's easy to drown. In solitude, every false narrative rises to the surface and looks you in the face. And the longer you sit in that space, the more unbearable it gets, until you stop avoiding and start confronting. And that's where transformation begins, because identity isn't built through comfort or praise. It's built through conflict, internal conflict. You can't grow if you haven't wrestled with who you've become. You can't lead if you haven't questioned what you believe, and you can't walk with purpose if you don't know what direction you're actually facing. Solitude forces those questions. It demands a verdict. And that verdict isn't verbal, it's behavioral. It's what you do when the spotlight is off, when no one's texting, when no one's checking in, when no one's asking you to be better. That's when the work becomes real. And here's the paradox. Solitude is painful, but it's also necessary. It's where you separate who you pretend to be from who you actually are. It's where you realize how much of your life has been dictated by fear of rejection, by addiction to validation, by imitation of those who never knew where they were going either. In solitude, the masks fall. The real voice starts speaking. The buried vision resurfaces, and often it tells you something you don't want to hear, that you've been hiding, that you've been shrinking, that you've traded depth for popularity and meaning for momentum. But that's the gift, because once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Once you see the gap between your potential and your reality, you either close it or you start lying consciously. And the people who choose to close it, they do so alone. Not because solitude is glamorous, but because it's necessary. Identity forged in public is weak. It relies on trends. It shifts with opinion. But identity forged in solitude, that's forged in fire. It's tested by silence. It's proven through loneliness. It becomes immovable, not because the world agrees with it, but because it no longer needs the world to approve of it. That's where real freedom is born. Freedom from performance. Freedom from insecurity, freedom from the fear of being misunderstood. Because when you win in solitude, you learn how to live without the applause, and that makes you unstoppable. Now you're not chasing trends. You're building truth. You're not adapting to crowds. You're building conviction. You're not hoping to be chosen. You already chose yourself, and that shift changes everything. It changes how you speak, how you act, how you carry yourself. You're no longer trying to fit in, you're trying to become, and that's always a lonely path at first, but solitude isn't forever. It's just first. The foundation has to be dug in isolation before the structure can stand in public. You don't build skyscrapers on sand, you don't build legacies on noise, and you don't build unshakable identity while drowning in the opinions of the world. You retreat to sharpen. You isolate to clarify. You go inward to gain the strength to walk forward, and once that identity is forged, then you step out, then you lead, then you serve, not from neediness, but from overflow, not from insecurity, but from conviction. The modern world wants to keep you shallow. It wants you scrolling instead of thinking, consuming instead of creating, reacting instead of reflecting, because when you're distracted, you're controllable. But solitude breaks that. Solitude says no to the chaos. It says, let's get still enough to hear the voice you buried under comfort. And when that voice comes back, it doesn't scream, it whispers, it reminds you. It redirects you, and in that whisper is the map to who you're meant to become, but you have to endure it. You have to stay in the silence long enough for it to speak. Most leave too early. They taste solitude and call it depression. They confuse quiet with failure, but the ones who stay, the ones who press in instead of escaping, they find something the world can't offer: clarity. That's where all transformation begins. Not with more followers or more status, but with a deep internal decision. This is who I am, and I'm done pretending otherwise. And from that moment, you become dangerous, not because you seek to destroy, but because you can't be moved. The storms come and you stand, the criticism arrives and you remain, the applause fades and you're still building, because your compass is internal now, your identity is set, and that kind of person, the one who's faced solitude and survived it, is rare. But that person is also necessary, because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more clarity. It doesn't need more imitation. It needs more authenticity. And that kind of authenticity is only born in the furnace of solitude. The difference between potential and power is discipline. Not the kind that gets posted online, not the kind that's performed for applause, but the kind that lives in the shadows, the kind that shows up when no one else will ever know. There is a sacred strength in doing what must be done without recognition, without witnesses, without external reward. That's where unbreakable confidence is born, not in being seen doing the right thing, but in knowing that you did it regardless of who was watching. Because the moment you start relying on an audience to validate your effort, you've already placed your future in someone else's hands. And when you depend on someone else to fuel your progress, you've given them the power to stop it. Discipline without witness is a contract with your future self. It's a promise made in silence and honored in struggle. It's waking up before the alarm because your purpose doesn't sleep. It's reading the page, lifting the weight, writing the plan, saying no to the short cut, not because someone told you to, but because you've decided who you're going to be. That kind of commitment isn't glamorous. It doesn't trend, but it transforms. It rewires your identity from someone who hopes into someone who executes, from someone who waits for the perfect moment into someone who creates the moment. And it happens behind closed doors, in quiet rooms, when no one's looking. The reason this matters so much is because the world rewards consistency, not intention. Everyone has dreams, everyone wants the outcome, but very few are willing to build the process, and fewer still are willing to build it in obscurity. That's why most stay stuck. They expect the result before the routine. But confidence doesn't come from achieving the goal. It comes from becoming the person who doesn't break their word to themselves. Every time you say you'll do something and follow through, a vote is cast for the person you want to be. Every time you keep a promise in private, you reinforce your self-respect, and that self-respect is the foundation of real confidence. There's a deception that says, I'll be more consistent once people notice me. But the truth is, you'll never be noticed until you're already consistent. Visibility is a byproduct of personal mastery, not a precondition. If you only show up when the world is watching, then you're not building discipline. You're building dependence, and dependence creates fragility. The moment the applause stops, so does your progress. The moment the attention fades, so does your effort. That's a weak foundation to stand on. But if you can train yourself to show up no matter who's watching, to put in the work when the room is empty, to execute the plan when no one cares, you've already won. Because now your drive is internal. Now your compass points forward regardless of what the crowd says. This kind of discipline doesn't scream. It whispers. It moves in patterns, not posts. It's not about doing something once and calling it growth. It's about doing it every day until it becomes who you are. Repetition, routine, ritual, the boring stuff, the unsexy stuff. That's where excellence lies, not in intensity, but in consistency. Because anyone can go hard for a week. Anyone can grind when it's new and exciting. But very few can do the mundane things over and over with precision, with pride, with patience. And that's what separates the ones who rise from the ones who talk. You start small, you build systems, You create rules that guide your behavior even when your feelings fluctuate, because feelings are liars. They're loud in the morning and silent by noon. They tell you to rest before you've earned it. They tell you it's too late, too early, too hard. But discipline doesn't ask how you feel. Discipline asks, what did you commit to? And that question, when answered honestly and acted upon, becomes your armor against doubt. It becomes your weapon against fear, because now every action you take reinforces a truth. I can rely on myself. That belief, built slowly, painfully, privately, is the source of unbreakable confidence. And that confidence doesn't just change how you act, it changes how you see. When you've proven to yourself that you can do hard things in silence, you stop fearing failure. You stop needing perfect conditions. You stop looking for shortcuts. You start seeing challenges as confirmation, not obstacles. Because now, struggle doesn't threaten your identity. It confirms it. It proves that you are who you say you are. That kind of alignment between action and belief is rare. But once it's built, no one can shake it. Not criticism, not rejection, not loss. Because you didn't borrow your strength. You built it. But it has to be earned. Not with one big effort, but with 1,000 small ones, 1,000 early mornings, 1,000 ignored temptations, 1,000 private victories that no one will ever celebrate. That's the price, and most won't pay it. Not because they can't, but because they've been trained to need validation. They've been taught that progress only matters if it's posted, that growth only counts if it's seen. But the people who truly shift the world, the ones who break through, they don't wait to be noticed. They become undeniable, and becoming undeniable requires private pain, private practice, private perseverance. You must be willing to be misunderstood, to look obsessive, to be told you're doing too much. Because most people are uncomfortable with discipline. They see it as rigid, as excessive, but what they call obsession, you call alignment. What they call extreme, you call necessary, because you're not chasing balance, you're chasing transformation. And transformation requires sacrifice, sacrifice of comfort, of popularity, of ease, and those sacrifices are made in private long before the rewards show up in public. The irony is, when you build discipline in the dark, you become light in the world. People feel your presence before they hear your words. They respect your actions before they know your story. Why? Because there's a weight to someone who has earned their strength, a gravity to someone who didn't skip the process. They carry themselves differently, not with arrogance but with certainty. They don't need to prove who they are, they already know. That's what you're building, not just habits, not just routines, but identity. The kind that lasts when pressure hits, the kind that stands when the storm comes, the kind that leads not because it seeks power, but because it has paid the price of preparation. And that preparation is not dramatic. It's not loud. It's not fun. It's disciplined action without witness, every day until the process becomes who you are, until your confidence is not dependent on outcome but rooted in your own integrity, until you look in the mirror and know, without doubt, that you can trust the person staring back. Comfort is seductive because it disguises itself as peace, but it is a trap dressed as rest. It whispers that you've earned the right to ease, to numbness, to withdrawal. But the truth is, the longer you stay in comfort, the further you drift from your potential. Discomfort is not your enemy. It is the compass pointing toward transformation. Freedom does not live on the other side of pleasure. It lives through pain, through pressure, through the fire that forges you into someone capable of carrying your calling. Every time you avoid discomfort, you reinforce the idea that growth is something to be feared. But when you embrace it, when you chase it, when you learn to breathe inside of it, you become someone the world cannot control. The modern mind has been trained to escape discomfort at the first sign of pressure. As soon as boredom arises, we reach for distraction. As soon as pain hits, we medicate. As soon as we feel lonely, we chase validation. But all of those impulses are reactions to a fear of facing what discomfort reveals, the truth. Discomfort exposes weakness, lack of discipline, lack of clarity, lack of direction. It brings your shortcomings to the surface with surgical precision. That is why it must be embraced, not because the pain is pleasurable, but because the pain is instructional. It teaches you where you've been hiding, where you've been dishonest, where you've been avoiding responsibility. It strips away illusion and replaces it with reality. And reality, although it hurts at first, is the only place you can build something real. The person who seeks comfort first will always be controlled by external forces, situations, opinions, setbacks. But the person who leans into discomfort becomes dangerous, not to others, but to limitation. They become immune to failure, not because they are perfect, but because they've stopped expecting ease. They've recalibrated their nervous system to find meaning in adversity. And when that shift happens, when discomfort is no longer a signal to stop, but a signal to lean in, everything changes. You begin to understand that pressure is not punishment, it's preparation. That stress is not always an alarm, it can be a signal that you are in the arena. That fatigue isn't failure, it's feedback that you are stretching beyond your current self. The body breaks down only to rebuild stronger. The mind becomes sharp through resistance. The spirit deepens through challenge, and that growth cannot happen in comfort. Comfort is stagnation in disguise. It rewards you with short-term relief but steals your long-term strength. It's the soft prison that most never try to escape, but you can't reach the next level of your life while clinging to the security of the last one. There is a cost to every version of you. The old one costs you your peace. The current one costs you your potential. The future one will cost you your comfort. That exchange is necessary. You cannot remain the same and grow. You cannot stay safe and become bold. You cannot avoid pain and still develop resilience. Discomfort is the toll booth on the road to freedom. You either pay it voluntarily or life will charge you with interest later. And here's the secret. Discomfort doesn't get easier, but you get better. You stop flinching at challenge. You stop panicking at resistance. You start interpreting the hard things as confirmation that you're aligned with a higher standard. And that reframing, that mindset, is what turns pain into power. Now, instead of avoiding the workout, you welcome it. Instead of hiding from difficult conversations, you initiate them. Instead of shrinking from responsibility, you claim more of it. Because now, you're not trying to avoid pain, you're using it. You're being refined by it. And every time you lean into it, you grow just a little more into the person you were built to become. But discomfort doesn't just grow you, it reveals you. It shows you what you're made of. Anyone can perform when things are easy. Anyone can talk when the environment is controlled. But when the floor falls out, when the plan breaks, when the pressure builds, that's when your real self shows up. Not the polished one, not the posted one, the real one, and that exposure is a gift, not a curse. Because once you see what's actually there, you can do something about it. You can train what's weak. You can fortify what's fragile. You can build what's missing. But none of that happens if you run from discomfort. Most people think freedom is the absence of struggle, but the opposite is true. Freedom is the result of embracing struggle so completely that you are no longer afraid of it. You become free the moment discomfort loses its control over you, when your identity is no longer tied to circumstances, when your peace no longer depends on conditions, when you are the same in adversity as you are in success. That kind of freedom isn't given, it's earned in sweat, in repetition, in the grind that no one sees. It is built when you choose to suffer now so you can rise later. And the rise is always internal before it's external. You don't win out there until you've conquered in here. You don't reach the summit until you've weathered the storm. Every hero's journey begins with a fall, a wilderness, a desert. And in that place, comfort dies. The false self burns, and what remains is something forged, not fabricated. Something that can stand when others fall. Something that can lead when others hide. Something that doesn't crumble under pressure because pressure is what created it. But you have to stop bargaining with discomfort, stop trying to avoid it, stop praying for easy days, start training for hard ones. Life is not a game of luck, it's a test of endurance. And those who endure, those who outlast, those who remain faithful to the process even when it hurts, they rise. They lead, they create, not because life got easier for them, but because they got stronger than what was in their way. You have to become someone who welcomes the fire, not recklessly, but with resolve. You don't seek pain for pain's sake. You seek it because you understand what it produces, because you know that every great transformation requires discomfort. You don't get to keep your comfort and become your future self. One must go, and every day you delay that decision, you delay your freedom. Discomfort doesn't mean you're off path. Often, it means you're exactly where you're supposed to be. It's the signal that you are breaking through a layer of weakness, a ceiling of limitation, a pattern of avoidance. You are shedding the version of yourself that could not carry the weight of your next level. And that shedding is painful, but it is sacred, because the most valuable things in life are on the other side of what most people refuse to face. You will not be remembered for the comfort you kept. You will be remembered for the discomfort you overcame, for the moments when you could have quit but kept going, when you could have stayed safe but chose to step into the unknown, when you could have taken the easy path but chose the necessary one. That's where legacies are born, in discomfort, in discipline, in decisions that look small but echo forever. That's where freedom is earned. You don't get to be seen until you've become, not truly, not with weight, not with credibility. Visibility without identity is a fragile illusion. You might catch the world's attention for a moment, but if there's no foundation beneath it, it collapses the moment pressure hits. That's why becoming is more important than being noticed. Because if you get seen before you've become, you'll crumble under the weight of being watched. You'll start performing instead of progressing. You'll shift to meet expectations instead of standing rooted in truth. You'll become a reflection of what people want rather than a projection of who you really are. And that's a slow death for anyone trying to do something real in the world. You have to build in silence, not because no one cares, but because no one should validate what isn't ready yet. There's sacredness in the unseen stages. The beginning is where strength is formed, and if you try to skip that, you rob yourself of the only thing that actually makes you worthy of lasting influence, substance. This generation is addicted to attention but allergic to process. It wants applause without preparation. It wants a stage without scars. But what the world doesn't tell you is that anything earned without becoming is just rented. And rented influence gets taken back the moment you stop pretending to be someone you're not. The work is the proof, and not the public work, the private work, the discipline when no one's asking, the integrity when no one's checking, the persistence when no one's clapping. That's the difference. That's what separates those who shine for a season from those who endure through storms. You can't lead from a place you haven't built. You can't inspire others to change if you've avoided every confrontation with yourself. You can't expect the world to see you if you haven't first seen what's wrong, weak, or fake within yourself and dealt with it ruthlessly. Becoming isn't glamorous, it's often invisible, it's gritty, it's lonely. It's repetitive, it's sacrificing comfort in exchange for character. It's letting go of the fantasy that you'll wake up one day ready and stepping into the truth that readiness is built, not found. You become ready by showing up when you're not, by acting when you're afraid, by choosing to endure instead of escape. And every time you do that, you sharpen the blade of your being, slowly, sharply, permanently. Everyone wants the outcome. Few want the obscurity. But obscurity is where the real work lives. You'll be questioned there, you'll be ignored, you'll be overlooked, and that's the point. Because it's in those seasons of silence that your motives are tested. Are you building for approval? Or are you building because you believe in the mission, whether anyone claps or not? Do you only execute when you're praised? Or do you execute because you've built a standard so deeply inside you that your performance doesn't rise or fall with recognition? The truth is, you don't become in the light. You become in the dark, where the repetition is deafening, where the grind feels endless, where your doubts scream louder than your motivation. And that's where you decide who you are. Not once, but again and again, and when you finally emerge, when the work has been done, the foundation set, the identity rooted, you don't need to demand attention. You become someone the world can't ignore. Not because you shouted the loudest, but because you became undeniable. The trap is thinking that if you're not seen, you're not valuable, but the greatest treasures are hidden until they're fully formed. Seeds grow in soil, not on stages, and if you dig them up too soon because you're desperate to be seen, you kill the process before it bears fruit. Timing matters, foundation matters, and when you trust that, when you surrender to the slowness of becoming, you grow deep roots that no wind can shake. Then when the moment comes, when the doors open, you won't just be ready, you'll be solid. You'll be whole, you'll be someone who can carry the responsibility that comes with being visible. There's a discipline in patience, a wisdom in waiting, and a maturity in resisting the urge to expose what isn't finished yet. This is not about hiding, it's about honoring the process. It's about saying, I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm trying to build something. And what you build in those seasons of invisibility will one day be the reason you're trusted, the reason you're followed, the reason you're remembered. You must become before you are seen because being seen too early is dangerous. It tempts you to protect an image rather than develop your character. It traps you in performance instead of progression. It makes you a prisoner to perception. And once that happens, your energy no longer goes to the mission. It goes to the maintenance of the mask. And no mask, no matter how polished, can withstand real adversity. But if you've built in private, if you've trained in silence, if you've stared your weaknesses down in the dark and done the work, then you don't need to fear being seen, because what they see is real. What they see is earned. What they see is someone who doesn't need their approval to stay consistent. And when you reach that place, you're dangerous. Not reckless, not arrogant. Dangerous in the way that nothing external can dictate your pace. You've been alone with the pain. You've walked through the questions. You've earned your identity, inch by inch. So when the lights come on, you're not caught off guard. You don't become someone new. You reveal who you've already been. And that's the kind of presence that shifts rooms, not just fills them, because you didn't rise on hype. You rose on substance, and substance doesn't fade. You have to understand that becoming is the work, not the prelude. It's not something you get through on the way to success. It is success. Because once you've become someone who keeps their word in private, who works without attention, who follows their values regardless of reward, then the outcomes take care of themselves. The opportunities find you, the doors open, and when they do, you walk through them not as someone chasing validation, but as someone offering value. That's what changes everything. Not just being seen, but being solid when you are. And that solidity only comes from the slow, patient, painful process of becoming, of showing up when it's inconvenient, of staying grounded when it's unpopular, of choosing purpose over performance, again and again, until who you are in the dark becomes the same person you are in the light, until the work becomes part of your nature, until the identity is forged, not borrowed. You must become before you are seen, because becoming is the only thing that can carry the weight of being seen.